Welcome back to the show. You're watching NHL Now. We've got news out of Buffalo. NHL Network insider Elliot Friedman was doing some radio this morning, and he got people talking with these comments saying, people are saying to Sabres GM Kevin Adams, you've got to trade Eichel, trade him now. Adams is saying, not so fast, in order to create a better trade market. He went on to say, no one will go on record and say it, but there are teams that agree with the Sabres medical staff on Eichel's recovery plan, and there are teams that don't. Now, to put that into context for viewers that might not know what that's referencing, there was a disagreement about how to deal with Jack Eichel's injury here moving forward. So that's what that means. There was one more comment here from Elliot Friedman. It was this: at the end of the day, I don't think the Sabres want to bring back Jack Eichel. They would like to move on. So let's bring in Elliot to get a little more detail on this situation. And Elliot, I'll start with this. I mean, there are so many layers to this story and really this relationship between Eichel and the Sabres. You got the injury, the disagreements on the rehab, the frustration with the lack of winning over the last few years. If the Sabres do feel that they have to move him and soon, how would you assess Eichel's trade value in terms of what Kevin Adams is going to be able to get in return for this player at this point, along the journey of that relationship?
Well, Jackie, first of all, you're really putting the pressure on me to add more than those tweets already gave you. So, I think it's I think it's really complicated. I do. I think that, look, I don't think anything I said there in terms of Buffalo wanting to move on or him getting dealt is in any way newsworthy. I think the moment that Kevin Adams said we want players who want to be here, I think everybody kind of knew where this was going. And, but I think it's incredibly complicated between the injury and the road that Eichel has said he wants to go down, the fact the Sabres aren't so crazy about it, the fact that, both Eichel and his people and the Sabres have talked to the league and the Players Association about what their rights are, the fact I think there are teams doing their own research into what Eichel's talking about here and what could happen. I think it's a really complicated deal. I've had people tell me that, hey, Jack Eichel is, a player that has a lot of interest. He's signed, people can say 10 million, it's a lot. I mean, for a number one center franchise player, it's really not. And you have him signed for a while. And there are people who know that wherever he gets traded to, he's going to be motivated to be successful. And you've got other people saying, well, he's injured and, obviously he wasn't happy there, and how are we going to know? And I think that's all just trying to destroy the Sabres' leverage. I just think we're in the middle of a huge poker game right now, and there still is, now that everybody knows where everyone's picking because of the lottery draft, I think the conversations are going serious. And I think sometime between now and the draft, we're going to have our answer. But I don't think it's a shock he's going to be traded. I think there's going to be plenty of interest. And I think everybody right now is just refusing to show their hand until they absolutely have to.
Elliot, what do you know about his health right now? Because obviously there's been this disagreement. He hasn't had this procedure, apparently the one that he would like. What do we know about his health right now?
Look, I think, right now I think everybody's being pretty quiet, EJ, because there's been so much of this that's public that people feel that it's not helping anyone to be public. I think that the Sabres and Eichel, the last I could tell is, and I don't know if this has changed, this was a little bit ago, so I since it's gone quiet, it's been harder to find out a bit more. But I had heard there was a lot of understanding that it was in everybody's best interest to work together on this and try to get this done. And that's kind of where they were the last time anyone would talk to me about it, that everybody knew the right thing here was to work on it and try to make everybody in the best situation so Eichel could move on and Buffalo could get a good deal. I am under the impression that the Sabres still believe that the best thing for Eichel is rest, and he'll be ready for next year. I think one of the reasons that Eichel wanted to have that surgery quickly was because the timeline for recovery would be on time to resume training and be ready for training camp next year. I'd heard the only way that people were really concerned about training camp next year, EJ, was if he had to have the kind of Peyton Manning surgery that he had, because it's a longer recovery time after it happens, and maybe people were a bit concerned about that. But as far as I know right now, I don't personally have any indication that he won't be on time for the start of next year.
All right. Well, the clock is ticking. We're going to be at the draft. I mean, pretty soon here. There's usually a lot of action then. We'll see how this Jack Eichel situation plays out. I'm going to ask you about coaching, Elliot. A lot of vacancies right now, and we're hearing that Columbus might be close to naming a head coach. What can you tell us there?
I do think Columbus was in a position where they were hoping to maybe get something done this week. Some of the candidates were told that that is something that Columbus would like to do. I saw Aaron Portzline's report, and I see your font on the screen about Brad Larson. And Aaron Portzline is an excellent reporter. He's really dialed in there. So if he says Brad Larson is a major contender there, I would tend to believe it. You know, the one thing, though, the name I do not want to count out in Columbus is Gerard Gallant. And Gerard Gallant is, I know he's on the Rangers' radar too, but he's got a history in Columbus. They know him. And I think the biggest question I have about Gallant is there a number that the Blue Jackets and Gallant can get to that makes this work? And like, I don't necessarily, because I think if he goes to New York, it's going to be a big number. And if he goes to Columbus, it's probably not as big a number, but that doesn't mean it can't work. And I do think he's on their radar. I do think they're talking to him. I do think he's a consideration. I think he's a kind of guy that the players in Columbus have let it be known they would be happy to play for. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Gallant just yet until either they make their hire and it's not him, or he goes somewhere else. I do think he's very much on Columbus's radar.
Elliot, how about the Seattle search? I'm a little surprised that they haven't named a head coach yet. I mean, I know we're on a little bit of a different time schedule, and perhaps they are waiting to see how things fall out with Rod Brind'Amour or others. But what are your thoughts on the situation in Seattle?
I do think they've spoken at least twice very recently to Rick Tocchet. I think he's got a legitimate shot there. The Brind'Amour thing is interesting to me. I just don't know if anybody's convinced he's really going to leave Carolina. So do I think there's teams out there like Seattle and like the Rangers who potentially would like to talk to Brind'Amour? Yes, I do. Does anybody really believe that whether he's coaching the Hurricanes or not, he's going to leave Carolina? That's a much different answer. Now, that doesn't mean the teams aren't going to want to talk to him, but you know, they just, nobody's convinced he's going to leave. So I think that's the biggest question about Brind'Amour. I'm for Seattle. Tocchet is definitely a name that's been getting a lot of consideration. You know, Joel Quenneville, I know those rumors have been out there. I don't get any sense that, you know, either he's interviewed there or Florida is looking for a new head coach, because both those things would have to happen. So that doesn't seem to be the case. The only other guy I could think of there that we haven't thought of yet is Paul Maurice, who also has a long Ron Francis connection. But I don't get any sense right now that Winnipeg's looking to make any kind of change.
All right, Elliot, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. Normally we want insight, we want nuggets, we want news. I'm going to ask you about the hockey that's being played right now and just get your opinion on what's been going on. We've got 3 of our final 4 teams here. What performance so far has been the most impressive for you, whether it's a team or a player or what? What stood out to you the most?
Well, you know, I remember, Jackie, how incredibly useless I was at life after my son was born for about 5 or 6 days afterwards. So watching Brock Nelson put on his performance last night, a couple days after him and his wife had a child, I was pretty impressed by that. To me, the Islanders are an unbelievable story. It really is shows that in hockey, especially, if everybody accepts their role, everybody understands their role, everybody is given a role, and you know, a team says our identity is our group, it can work. I think the Islanders are very much that kind of a team. I'm blown away by Montreal. I didn't think they'd be 2 rounds into the playoffs. I mean, overall, Jackie, I think the quality of hockey has been incredible. I think the playoffs have been really entertaining. You know, I'm amazed that Vegas has taken 3 in a row from Colorado. I didn't think that was possible either. But, you know, they have a chance to win tonight. But I would say Montreal and the Islanders are the 2 most surprising stories to me. Actually, I'm not even surprised by the Islanders anymore. I'm just impressed by how they do it. But Montreal, I'm definitely surprised by. And the overall quality, I think, has been great. Johnny, do you get paid for this segment? Like, what are you doing over there?
Listen, Elliot, when you're dropping so much knowledge, I'm just going to sit back, take notes, and soak it all in. You know,
I'm hypnotized by the
I can't make you any better.
Yeah, that's true. You can't make me look any better either. But you know, I'm hypnotized by the pillows and the painting there, man. Like that stuff's really good.
We all are. We all are. Yeah. Hey, Elliot, one more for me for you. I'll go back to the coaches. Any buzz on David Quinn at all? Obviously the former Ranger coach that had been a college coach and at BU. Any thoughts of him maybe bouncing back and being in the mix for any of these jobs that are open right now?
EJ, I know he interviewed in Columbus. That's definitely, I should say this. I know he had permission to talk to Columbus. I believe the interview happened, but I can't say with 100%. So I think that Quinn was definitely on their radar. And I'd heard also that Seattle and Arizona had asked for permission to speak to him. So I'm curious to see if that's going to go anywhere. You know, the one guy I still think is not available yet that I do think some teams will talk to is Lane Lambert from the Islanders. I mean, I've been waiting for him to get an opportunity. I think he deserves one. And you know Lou Lamoriello. Like, there's no way anybody's going to be allowed to talk to anyone on his staff as long as they're still playing. So I definitely think he's on Arizona's radar. And but he's not. Nobody's going to be talking to him until the Islanders are done, whenever that is.
All right, Elliot. Always a pleasure catching up with you. Thanks for the Nuggets and your thoughts on the Stanley Cup playoffs thus far. Enjoy the game tonight.
All right, guys. Have a great night. Good to chat with y'all.